Perhaps inspired by the players, the Piglin King finally mastered the proper use of obsidian. With the nether portal successfully built, millions of Piglin soldiers stormed into the overworld. They were fed up with the heat and dryness of the nether, so every creature from below poured into this world. The Piglin King was the last to step through the portal. He knew perfectly well that to establish a foothold here, he had to crush the three major powers of the overworld and take their place. The zombie kingdom currently holding a meeting was one of those three powers. Their strength was not to be underestimated. Relying on a complete industrial system and numerous crafters, they could produce enough armor and weapons in a short time to arm every zombie to the teeth, forming a formidable military force. To fight off the nether invasion, the zombie king even enchanted his spear, giving him a much faster attack speed. Now that everything was ready, it was time to head to the battlefield. The massive army began marching toward the nether creatures. Leading the charge, the zombie king felt incredibly confident. He imagined that defeating the Piglin King would scare off the nether mobs, making him the hero who saved the overworld, granting him higher status than the other two kings. However, his beautiful fantasy was quickly shattered. Upon arriving at the battlefield, the scene before him made his skin crawl. As far as the eye could see, it was packed with Piglin soldiers. They were well prepared and clearly ready for a fight. It was too late for the zombie king to retreat. The Piglins below had already spotted them. With a command from the Piglin King, they immediately began marching in formation, swarming toward the zombie troops like locusts. Since there was no escape, the zombie king had to bite the bullet and lead the charge. He led the cavalry at the front, followed by a massive wave of infantry. On the Piglin side, armored units charged ahead, while archers fired relentlessly from the back. In an instant, a rain of arrows engulfed the frontline cavalry. Only a few riders survived. The battle had barely begun, and the zombie army was already at a disadvantage. At this point, the zombie king still thought he could turn the tide single-handedly. Wielding his enchanted spear and riding his red-haired zombie horse, he fought like a legendary warrior, tearing through the enemy ranks. Even facing the flying blazes, he used his own methods to knock them out of the sky one by one. But he soon realized in despair that one person's strength has its limits. The Piglin army had absolute superiority in numbers and possessed better coordination in combat. Plus, they had aerial fire support. If this continued, the citizens of the zombie kingdom would likely be completely wiped out. So the zombie king quickly had his subordinates find 2 bats and 2 secret letters. After writing requests for help, he immediately sent the bats off at full speed. One letter went to the pharaoh in the desert temple, and the other was passed through the drowned to reach the drowned king. After doing all this, the zombie king launched another charge, but this time he met a real opponent. The Piglin King suddenly burst out to confront him head-on. As the commander of his nation, he represented the pinnacle of the Piglin army's power. In just a few moves, the zombie king was knocked off his horse. Watching his opponent stride arrogantly toward him, the zombie king tried to get up and fight back, but he was quickly kicked down again. However, just then, a horn sounded in the distance. The next second, the hillside opposite them swarmed with massive numbers of desert cavalry. Seeing this, the Piglin army immediately got into formation and had their archers attack from a distance. But this time, the desert archers fired back instantly. Their arrows were tipped with potions of weakness. Any Piglin soldier hit would soon collapse to the ground. Since the desert cavalry rode camels, they could carry an archer behind them. This allowed them to engage in close combat, while also attacking from range. The zombie king was suddenly rescued too. His savior was none other than the pharaoh who received the plea for help. With the support of the desert cavalry, the tide of battle began to turn. Meanwhile, on the nearby river, the drowned king arrived with all his subordinates, rushing to the battlefield. They used fishing rods to drag Piglin soldiers into the water. Since Piglins don't know how to swim, falling in meant certain death. Besides fishing rods, the drowned also hurled tridents from a distance. In the blink of an eye, a large swath of Piglins were killed or injured. Seeing this, the Piglin king stomped his feet in fury. But he didn't give up yet. He ordered a few minions to hurry back to the nether, and then brought out a ghast chained with iron. Once the ghast joined the battle, it spat out several fireballs in a row. Every shot hit its target perfectly. The battle seemed to turn in their favor once again. The newly arrived desert archers tried to counterattack with arrows, and swarms of drowned tried using fishing rods to pull it out of the sky, but all attempts failed. Fortunately, the drowned king spotted the problem. He noticed that the Piglin soldiers holding the chains were controlling the ghast. So the solution was simple. The zombie king led a charge with 4 elite troops. They just needed to kill the 4 Piglins controlling the ghast to solve this big problem once and for all. However, in an instant, only the zombie king was left of the assault squad. Facing the obstacles ahead, he leaped over them on his horse and arrived beneath the ghast in a flash. Then, without breaking a sweat, he quickly dispatched the 4 Piglins controlling it. He then used the chains to redirect the ghast's attack, letting the Piglin soldiers get a taste of their own fireballs. Seeing this, the Piglin king immediately jumped into the fray, rushing straight toward the zombie king. He grabbed onto a chain too, and a struggle for control of the ghast ensued. However, their struggle soon accidentally injured the ghast. A deflected sword struck the ghast in the rear. Hurt and startled, the ghast flew desperately toward the sky. In the blink of an eye, they were hundreds of feet in the air. A fall from here would kill them no matter what armor they wore, so they had to hold on to the chains tightly with one hand, while fighting with the other. But just then, 3 blazes appeared in front of the zombie king. Even with limited mobility, the zombie king dodged several fireballs and managed to strike back. Seeing this, the pharaoh immediately ordered his archers to provide support. But this couldn't go on forever. The zombie king decided to find a way back to the ground. Using his spear's charge ability, He tangled the chain around the ghast's tentacles. This restricted its ability to fly, forcing it to descend. However, during the process, one of the ghast's tentacles broke free and slapped them both away. Without anything to break their fall, dropping from that height would squash them flat. But the Zombie King still had a trick up his sleeve. He grabbed his spear in desperation and used the charge skill to propel himself toward the river. In the end, one smashed into the dirt and the other fell into the water. With the fall of the Piglin King, the Piglin army was left leaderless and was quickly driven back to the Nether. As for the Zombie King, he was fine after falling into the water. The drowned king rescued him and brought him ashore. Next, they went to the Nether portal and blew it up with TNT. With that, they successfully repelled the invaders and defended the integrity of the overworld.